good and bad in all of us.
If we don't help, the devil will have a new form, one more powerful than he's ever known.
There are some demons you just can't escape.
A lot of mistakes. But Danny's the one good thing.
Need your help. This child is in danger.
Better make sure he doesn't turn out to be the Antichrist.
The right, he'll destroy whoever's got it coming. You should be.
Ghost Rider is back with a vengeance. But is Spirit of Vengeance actually worth watching? Join Carlifax as we review the movie and uncover some crazy facts you probably didn't know. From Nicolas Cage's wild performance to the darkest Ghost Rider moments. Let's dive in. Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance 2011 Ghost Rider. Spirit of Vengeance is a 2011 American superhero movie based on the Marvel Comics character Ghost Rider. It is the follow up to the 2007 movie Ghost Rider. Nicolas Cage returns as Johnny Blaze, the man who becomes Ghost Rider. The movie also features Ciarán Hinds, Violante Placido, Johnny Whitworth, Christopher Lambert, and Idris Elba in supporting roles. The movie was directed by Mark Nevaldine and Brian Taylor. The screenplay was written by Scott M. Gimple, Seth Hoffman, and David S. Goyer. The movie was first shown publicly for one night on December 11th, 2011, before getting its full theatrical release on February 17, 2012. It was released in both 2D and 3D. The story once again follows Johnny Blaze, a man cursed to become the Ghost Rider. Johnny has the power to hunt down demons, but he also struggles to control the dark spirit living inside him. This time, he gets pulled into a dangerous mission when a secret religious group asks him to protect a young boy named Danny. Danny is believed to be in serious danger because the devil's followers are after him. Johnny knows that getting involved could put his own life at risk, but he decides to help protect the kid. From there, the movie turns into a wild supernatural battle filled with demons, motorcycles, explosions, and plenty of Ghost Rider action. Compared to the first Ghost Rider movie, Spirit of Vengeance received a much more negative response from critics. A lot of the criticism was aimed at the screenplay, CGI effects, and some of the performances. Basically, critics felt that the movie had a cool character and some crazy action, but the story and execution didn't hit the mark. Even with the mixed reviews, the movie still made a decent amount of money at the box office. It reportedly earned somewhere between 132.6 million and 149.4 million worldwide. while its production budget was around $57 million. Nicolas Cage later said that he was done playing Ghost Rider and plans for another sequel were eventually dropped. After that, the movie rights to the character returned to Marvel Studios. Ghost Rider later showed up in a different form when the Robbie Reyes version of the character appeared in the TV series Agents of SHIELD. This version was different from Johnny Blaze but still brought the supernatural Ghost Rider character into the Marvel TV universe. There have also been plans for a new Ghost Rider movie set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The upcoming reboot is currently planned for release in 2028, with Ryan Gosling attached to play the title character. So, even though Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance didn't exactly win over the critics, the movie still has its own fan base. Nicolas Cage goes completely off the rails as Ghost Rider, and the movie brings a darker, crazier, and more over the top version of the character to the screen. If you are into supernatural action, demonic villains, insane motorcycle scenes, and Nicolas Cage going full Ghost Rider, this movie definitely has some memorable moments. Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance. Full story. Explained, the movie starts with a French priest named Marot, played by Idris Elba, warning the monks at a monastery that the devil's forces are coming for a young boy named Danny. The boy is believed to be extremely important to the devil, so Moreau knows he has to get Danny out of there before it's too late. Sure enough, the monastery comes under attack. Moreau tries to protect Danny and his mother, Nadia, played by Violante Placido, and helps them escape. But Nadia doesn't trust him. She pulls out a gun and shoots at Moreau before running away with Danny. Moreau manages to distract the man chasing them, but the situation nearly gets him killed. He loses track of Nadia and Danny, but he knows there's only one person powerful enough to protect the boy: Ghost Rider. So, Murrow goes looking for him. The story takes place about 8 years after the events of the first movie. In that movie, Johnny Blaze, played by Nicolas Cage, made a deal with a demon named Roax, also known as Mephistopheles, played by Ciarán Hinds. That deal turned Johnny into Ghost Rider, a supernatural spirit of vengeance covered in flames. Ghost Rider feeds on the evil of the people he punishes and can send their sins right back at them. He doesn't really care how big or small the sin is. Whether someone has committed something horrible like mass murder or simply told a small lie, Ghost Rider can judge them for their actions. Because of this curse, Johnny has gone into hiding. He's constantly fighting to keep the Ghost Rider spirit under control and doesn't want to hurt innocent people. Morrow eventually finds Johnny and asks him to protect Danny. Johnny isn't interested at first, but Morrow offers him a deal. He tells Johnny that his religious order may have the power to restore his soul and completely remove the Ghost Rider curse from him. Meanwhile, Nadia and Danny are being chased by a group of dangerous men. The group eventually catches them and takes them to their leader, Ray Carrigan, played by Johnny Whitworth. Carrigan is Nadia's former boyfriend and a seriously dangerous guy. Carrigan has Danny tied up and is about to kill Nadia when Ghost Rider suddenly shows up. He goes absolutely crazy on Carrigan's men, killing several of them before turning his attention toward Danny. Nadia manages to distract Ghost Rider for a moment, but the bad guys use grenades to take him down. With Ghost Rider temporarily out of the fight, Kerrigan grabs Danny and takes off. Johnny eventually wakes up in a hospital the next morning. When he leaves, he talks to Nadia and tells her not to completely trust him, but he still agrees to help her find Danny. At the same time, Kerrigan tells Rock that Ghost Rider has found them. Rock then uses his supernatural powers to contact Danny through a phone call. He places a kind of supernatural shield around Danny, basically creating a firewall that keeps Ghost Rider from sensing where the boy is. Rock warns Carrigan that this protection won't keep Danny safe forever. So Carrigan still has to follow Roark's instructions and deliver the boy to him. Later, Nadia finally tells Johnny the truth about Danny. She explains that when she was dying, she made a deal with Roark. In exchange for saving her life, Roark got Nadia to become pregnant with Danny. That means Danny isn't just some random kid. He is directly connected to Roark and can become a vessel for him. Roark wants to use Danny to gain unlimited power in the human world because his own power is limited while he's far away from hell. Danny manages to escape for a short time, but things go wrong when he breaks his ankle. Because of the injury, he can't get very far and is eventually captured again. That night, Johnny and Nadia track down someone connected to Kerrigan. They question the guy to find out where Danny is being held. Johnny then takes off on his own because he wants to deal with Kerrigan directly. Nadia manages to rescue Danny while Johnny goes after the bad guys. During the fight, Ghost Rider takes things to another level. He uses a huge mining machine, the Bagger 288, and turns it into a massive flaming machine of destruction. He tears through the enemy's hideout, completely wrecking the place and seriously injuring Carrigan. When Ghost Rider eventually catches up with Nadia, he starts using his penance stare on her. But before he can finish, Danny stops him with just a few words. Danny somehow has a hidden power that allows him to control or stop Ghost Rider. Morrow eventually catches up with Johnny, Nadia, and Danny as they continue their escape. But Roark isn't finished with Carrigan. He uses his supernatural powers to transform Carrigan into a terrifying demon called Blackout. This new version of Carrigan has the ability to instantly decay and destroy anything he touches, especially when he's surrounded by darkness. Johnny, Nadia, and Danny make their way to Moreau's monastery, where they believe the boy will finally be safe. Moreau keeps his promise to Johnny and prepares to remove the Ghost Rider curse. He explains that Ghost Rider was originally connected to Zarathos, a spirit of justice. But after Zarathos was captured, tortured, and driven insane in hell by the devil, he was twisted into the spirit of vengeance. Moreau performs the exorcism and successfully removes the spirit from Johnny. For the first time in years, Johnny becomes completely human again. But things don't stay peaceful for long. The head monk, Methodius, played by Christopher Lambert, believes Danny can never truly be safe because of the evil influence connected to him. Methodius decides that the only way to protect everyone is to kill Danny. He orders his monks to capture Johnny, Moreau, and Nadia and prepares to execute the boy. Then Blackout shows up. Carrigan attacks the monastery, kills the monks, and captures Danny once again. His plan is to deliver Danny directly to Rourke. Johnny, Moreau, and Nadia chase after them. Johnny refuses to abandon Danny because he promised the kid that he would protect him. Rourke begins the ritual to transfer his spirit and power into Danny. Johnny, Nadia, and Moreau sneak into the compound to rescue the boy. During the attack, Blackout kills Moreau with everything falling apart. Danny uses his own supernatural power to bring Ghost Rider back to Johnny. Rourke himself reveals that Danny has powers similar to his own. Johnny transforms into Ghost Rider once again, but this time he is stronger and ready to finish the fight. Rourke manages to escape with Danny, so Ghost Rider and Nadia chase after them. A massive vehicle chase follows, with Ghost Rider going after Rourke and Danny. During the chaos, Ghost Rider catches up with Blackout and defeats him. He then causes the SUV carrying Rourke and Danny to crash. Rourke tries to escape, but Ghost Rider finally gets his chance to fight back. He uses his power to send Rourke straight back to hell. Danny is killed in the crash. But Johnny isn't willing to let the boy stay dead. Using the blue flames of Zarathos, Johnny brings Danny back to life. Danny is reunited with his mother, and Johnny makes sure the kid is finally saved. By the end of the movie, something has changed inside Ghost Rider. Instead of the usual orange flames, he is now covered in powerful blue flames, showing the connection to Zarathos and his original nature as a spirit of justice. Johnny gets back on his motorcycles and rides away, finally accepting who he is. He says, "My name is Johnny Blaze. I am the Ghost Rider." And that's how Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance wraps up with Johnny Blaze fully embracing the Ghost Rider instead of running from the curse. Nicolas Cage as Johnny Blaze, Ghost Rider. Nicolas Cage returned to the dual role of Johnny Blaze and the Ghost Rider, the central figure of the 2011 sequel. 8 years after the events of the first film, Blaze has been living in exile in Eastern Europe, attempting to suppress the spirit of vengeance that possesses him. Cage's portrayal emphasizes a man worn down by the curse, developing a dark, sarcastic, and ironic sense of humor as a coping mechanism comparable to that of a police officer or paramedic who has witnessed too many horrors. This version of the character is more reconceived than a direct continuation, with a different tone and origin sequence that leans into a darker, more chaotic energy. under the direction of Mark Neville and Brian Taylor. Cage approached the Ghost Rider aspect with an unconventional method he has described as nouveau shamanic. He painted his face in black and white to evoke the Afro Caribbean or New Orleans voodoo icon Baron Samedi, also referenced as Baron Saturday, a spirit of death who is simultaneously lustful and protective of children. He wore black contact lenses that eliminated the whites and pupils of his eyes, creating a skull like or predatory appearance. Onto his leather jacket, he sewed ancient Egyptian relics and carried stones such as tourmaline and onyx, using these objects to channel energy and stimulate his imagination so that the performance would feel less like acting and more like embodiment. He would arrive on set in this state and remain silent to our co stars and crew, feeding off the unease this produced. Cage has stated that he believed he was the Ghost Rider during these moments. This approach allowed him to play the rider more fully than in the first film, where the transformation was largely visual effects driven. Here, physicality, movement, and presence conveyed the entity's hunger and lack of conscience. The character's internal conflict remains central. Blaze wants freedom from the curse, yet the rider's power is necessary to protect the boy Danny and confront the forces seeking him. Dialogue and voiceover underscore Blaze's self awareness of his past, deal with the devil, and the permanent consequences of that choice. Cage's performance mixes manic intensity, dark comedy, and moments of vulnerability, consistent with his established screen persona while adapting it to the more frenetic visual style of the directors. Fergus Riordan, as Danny Fergus Riordan, plays Danny the young boy at the center of the conflict. Danny is the son of Nadia and, unbeknownst to many at first, the half human offspring of Roark, the film's incarnation of the devil. The boy becomes the target of a ritual that would allow Roark to transfer his essence into Danny's body on a specific prophetic day, effectively overwriting the child's identity. Riordan's performance centers on a child caught between ordinary vulnerability and emerging supernatural potential. Danny interacts with Johnny Blaze during their flight and protection efforts, asking questions that mix innocence with the absurdity of the situation, including a memorable exchange about the practicalities of the rider's flaming form. The role requires conveying both fear and a growing awareness the larger forces at work. Production notes indicate that Matt Long, who had played a younger Johnny Blaze in the first film, was originally considered for related flashback material, but Ionut Christian Lefter ultimately portrayed young Johnny Blaze, keeping Riordan focused on the present day Danny. Violante Placido, as Nadia Italian actress, Violante Placido portrays Nadia, Danny's mother, and a former associate of Ray Carrigan. Nadia is a protective, resourceful, and physically capable figure who has made a desperate past deal with Rourke to save her own life, resulting in Danny's conception. She is willing to use firearms engage in high stakes chases and confront both human and supernatural threats to keep her son safe. Placido, daughter of actors Michele Placido and Simonetta Stefanelli, brought prior experience from Italian cinema and her Hollywood appearance opposite George Clooney in The American. In this film, she performs action sequences that include shooting and stunt work, reflecting her background in physical disciplines such as horseback riding and martial arts. Nadia's relationship with Blaze evolves from wary alliance to shared purpose, and her history with Kerrigan adds personal stakes to the confrontations. The character is written as a mother whose primary good act is her son, even as she acknowledges past mistakes. Placido's performance balances toughness with maternal urgency, grounding the more fantastical elements through her determination. Ciarán Hinds, as Rourke Ciarán Hinds, takes the role of Rourke, the film's version of Mephistopheles Mephisto, the demon lord who originally bound the spirit of vengeance to Johnny Blaze. Peter Fonda had played a related figure in the first film and expressed interest in returning, but the part went to Hines. Rock appears in a weakened human form that cannot fully contain his power. He requires Danny as a vessel to regain strength and operate freely on Earth. Hines, known for authoritative and often morally complex roles, brings a measured, unsettling presence to the character. Roark is calculating, capable of dry menace, and willing to empower intermediaries such as Kerrigan when direct action is limited by his deteriorating body. Scenes reveal his paternal claim on Danny and his frustration with the limits of his current form. Hines has noted that the opportunity to play the devil held inherent appeal, and he approached the role after concurrent work involving religious or supernatural themes. The performance emphasizes quiet control and the horror of a being who views human lives as transactional. Johnny Whitworth as Ray Kerrigan. Blackout Johnny Whitworth plays Ray Kerrigan, a mercenary, drug dealer, and gun runner with a prior personal history with Nadia. Hired by Roark to capture Danny, Kerrigan begins as a human antagonist, ruthless, opportunistic, and familiar with the criminal underworld of Eastern Europe. After a near fatal encounter with the Ghost Rider leaves him crushed under debris, Roark resurrects and empowers him as Blackout, granting the ability to decay organic and inorganic matter through touch and to manipulate darkness. Whitworth has described the transformation as elevating Kerrigan from a pragmatic bad man into a more extreme, almost masochistic psychopath who relishes the new power. The actor drew on physical imagery, comparing certain movements to a spider or spider monkey for the empowered sequences. Blackout's confrontations with the rider include decay effects on chains and vehicles, and the character ultimately meets his end via the penance stair. Whitworth's dual performance tracks the shift from street level criminal to supernatural enforcer, providing a tangible human scale threat that escalates into the demonic. Idris Elba as Moro Idris Elba portrays Moro, an original character created for the film, a French accented alcoholic warrior monk affiliated with a secret religious order dedicated to opposing Roark's plans. Murrow is introduced in a high energy opening sequence involving motorcycle action and gunplay as he attempts to protect Danny and Nadia. He tracks down the reclusive Johnny Blaze and offers to free him from the Ghost Rider curse in exchange for protecting the boy until a prophetic danger has passed. Morrow is capable of communicating with spirits and possesses an ability dramatized through distinctive eye contacts to perceive souls, an element Elba linked thematically to his concurrent Marvel role as Heimdall in Thor, suggesting an unofficial connection between the characters. Elba has spoken of Moreau as a righteous but flawed man whose faith is imperfect, who drinks, rides motorcycles, and is prepared to use any means necessary. The performance mixes dry humor, physical commitment, and moments of genuine conviction, making Moreau one of the more dynamic supporting figures. Elba's presence adds both action capability and a moral counterpoint to Blaze's reluctant heroism. Spencer Wilding as Granick Spencer Wilding appears as Granick, one of the enforcers aligned with the antagonistic forces pursuing Danny. Wilding, a tall performer frequently cast in physically imposing or creature roles, including later work in Game of Thrones and Doctor Who, contributes to the film's roster of threatening supporting characters who engage in the various chases, assaults on monasteries, and confrontations with the rider Sorin Tofan as Kurdish. Sorin Tofan plays the character credited as Kurdish, a supporting role within the network of operatives working for or around Carrigan and Roark's interests. As with several Eastern European film productions, local and regional actors filled numerous secondary parts that populate the criminal and monastic environments. Jacek Koman as Terokov. Jacek Koman portrays Terokov, another figure within the antagonistic or institutional structures surrounding the central conflict. Koman's screen presence, known from a range of international and European productions, adds weight to the secondary cast. Anthony Stewart Head as Benedict Anthony Stewart Head, credited in some sources as Anthony Head, plays Benedict, associated with the monastic or religious order that intersects with Morrow's efforts. Head, widely recognized for roles requiring authority and understated intensity, brings a measured quality to the institutional side of the story. The monks and figures who debate the fate of Danny and the ethics of containing or destroying the perceived threat he represents. Christian Iacob as Vasil Christian Iacob appears as Vasil, contributing to the supporting ensemble of characters encountered during the Eastern European sequences. Christopher Lambert as Methodius. Christopher Lambert plays Methodius, a high ranking figure among the monks. Methodius takes a hardline stance, arguing that Danny must be eliminated because the danger he represents will never fully pass. This creates internal conflict within the religious order and places Moreau, Blaise, and Nadia in opposition to the group's leadership. Lambert, long associated with roles that carry a certain mythic or world-weary quality, embodies the inflexible institutional response to the supernatural crisis. Jai Stefan as Krachev, Jai Stefan portrays Krachev, another member of the supporting cast involved in the pursuit and conflict sequences. Stefan had previously worked with the directors on the Crank films, providing continuity of style and physical performance within the high energy action framework. Vincent Regan as Toma Nikasevich. Vincent Regan appears as Toma Nikasevich, adding further presence to the secondary antagonists or associates operating in the same sphere as Carrigan. Ionat Christian Lefter as young Johnny Blaze. Ionat Christian Lefter portrays the younger version of Johnny Blaze in relevant sequences, filling the flashback or origin related imagery that connects to the character's earlier deal and transformation. Additional supporting performers Will Ashcroft appears as the gray-sighted man. Sabina Brandusch, also credited as Sabina Brandos, plays a nurse. Tobias Ogerfalk is credited as Dude Forrest. Adina Galupa, also listed as Adina Edie, appears as Girl Forrest. Arlene Pang plays an EMT worker. Alex Tama is credited in an uncredited capacity as Boy in Restaurant. These roles populate the everyday and transitional environments of the story, medical settings, roadside or forest encounters, and incidental civilian presence, against which the larger supernatural conflict unfolds. Directorial and creative context for the ensemble. The casting reflects the tonal shift brought by directors Mark Neville and Brian Taylor. Their background in kinetic, exaggerated action, Crank and its sequel, informed a preference for performers who could handle both heightened physical sequences and the film's blend of dark humor and horror. Screenwriters Scott M. Gimple, Seth Hoffman, and David S. Goyer, with Goyer also providing the story shaped characters that allowed the principal actors room for distinctive interpretations. Cage's method driven intensity, Elba's charismatic, flawed warrior monk, Hinds' controlled menace, Whitworth's escalating villainy, Placido's grounded maternal ferocity, and Riordan's vulnerable yet pivotal child. Production occurred primarily in Romania and Turkey, which influenced the availability and integration of regional supporting players alongside the international leads. The ensemble as a whole balances star power Cage, Elba, Hines, Lambert, Head with character actors capable of serving the film's more outlandish requirements. Cage's commitment to immersion, Elba's injection of energy and thematic linkage to other Marvel work, Heinz's authoritative devil, Whitworth's transformation arc, and Placido's physical and emotional commitment form the core of the casting achievement. Secondary players expand the world of Eastern European monasteries, criminal networks, and supernatural enforcers without diluting the focus on the central conflict over Danny's fate and Blaze's possible redemption or continued bondage to the spirit of vengeance. The result is a cast structured to support a louder, more visually aggressive iteration of the Ghost Rider mythology than its predecessor. Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance 2011. Production development and pre-production talk of a follow-up to Ghost Rider began almost as soon as the 2007 film had finished its theatrical run. Marvel producer Avi Arad announced at a press event in February 2007 that a sequel was already in development, a remarkably quick turnaround that signaled the studio saw enough commercial upside in the character to keep the franchise moving. Peter Fonda, who had played the demonic Mephistopheles in the original, publicly expressed interest in returning for a second outing, and Nicolas Cage, the star of the first film, said in December 2007 that he wanted to reprise the role of Johnny Blaze as well. In a separate interview around the same time, Cage went further, suggesting that any sequel should lean into a darker tone and introduce villains created specifically for the film rather than recycling material. Around the same period, rumors circulated that the sequel might introduce Danny Ketch, the character who succeeds Johnny Blaze as Ghost Rider in the Marvel Comics continuity of the early 1990s. A rumor that, in a twist, ended up partially true, since the finished film uses Danny as the name of a central child character rather than as a second rider. Momentum slowed for a while, but by September 2008, Cage was telling IGN that Columbia Pictures had begun taking meetings on a sequel. He described early conversations about sending Ghost Rider to Europe on behalf of the church, with story elements he felt were very much in the zeitgeist. Given the enormous cultural footprint of the Da Vinci Code a few years earlier, a comparison that makes sense in hindsight, since the completed film does revolve around a secretive religious order protecting a child from supernatural forces. The project's fortunes firmed up in February 2009 when an online report indicated Columbia had officially greenlit the sequel with Cage attached to return while the studio searched for writers to shape the script. David S. Goyer, a screenwriter already well known in genre circles for his work on the Blade trilogy and Batman Begins, signed on shortly afterward. Speaking to MTV, Goyer confirmed that the new story would be set roughly 8 years after the events of the first film, and said he hoped production could begin as early as 2010, a timeline that in the end slipped by several months but wasn't far off. One of the most striking production decisions was budgetary. Spirit of Vengeance was made for an estimated $57 million, roughly half the $110 million spent on the 2007 original. That reduction reflected both the mixed commercial and critical performance of the first film and a broader industry mood, with the genre becoming increasingly crowded heading into the early 2010s, and with Marvel's own cinematic universe beginning to take shape. independently through Marvel Studios. A leaner budget made the sequel a lower risk bet, even if its box office ceiling was correspondingly lower. Cage returned to the lead role, and directing duties went to Mark Neville and Brian Taylor, the filmmaking pair best known at the time for Crank and its sequel Crank. High voltage, hyperkinetic, self aware action films with a cult following among young male audiences. Bringing them on board signaled a clear tonal pivot away from the more conventional superhero movie approach of the first film's director, Mark Steven Johnson. Neville and Taylor brought over key collaborators from their Crank films, including editor Brian Burdan and cinematographer Brandon Trost, giving the sequel a visual and editorial continuity with their earlier, more anarchic work. For his performance, Cage took a hands on approach to the character's visual identity. He had his face painted black and white, wore black contact lenses, and had pieces of ancient Egyptian inspired artifacts sewn onto his leather jacket, all in an effort to physically channel the spirit of vengeance at the character's core. Brian Taylor said publicly that this version of the rider would be darker than in the first film, and that the creative team was drawing on the Ghost Rider. Road to Damnation comic book miniseries by writer Garth Ennis and artist Clayton Crane. A fitting influence, since Ennis has built much of his career on morally bruising, adult oriented takes on established characters. Casting filled out over the following months. Ciarán Hinds, an actor with a strong pedigree in prestige film and television, took on the role of Rourke, later revealed to be Mephistopheles in disguise, the demon lord who originally struck the deal with Johnny Blaze. This was the role Peter Fonda had once hoped to reprise, though he ultimately did not return. Violante Placido was cast as Nadia, the mother of the child at the center of the plot, while Idris Elba, then rising quickly in Hollywood profile, joined as Maro, a hard drinking member of a secret religious order who recruits Johnny for the mission. Maro was written as an entirely original character with no direct comic book counterpart. Christopher Lambert, an actor whose career had been defined for decades by his role in the original Highlander film, was cast as the monk Methodius and reportedly underwent 3 months of sword training and shaved his head to prepare for the part. Johnny Whitworth was cast as the film's chief mercenary villain, Ray Kerrigan, who is later transformed into the character Blackout. Though the filmmakers openly acknowledged that beyond his physical appearance, almost nothing about the film's version of Blackout was drawn from his depiction in the comics. His decay inducing powers were essentially invented for the movie. Interestingly, Matt Long, who had played a young version of Johnny Blaze in the 2007 film, was initially set to return for flashback material, but he was ultimately replaced by Romanian actor Ionut Christian Lefter, likely a practical decision tied to the production's move to shoot primarily in Romania with local talent. Supporting roles went to Anthony Head as Benedict, a senior monk protecting Nadia and Danny at the film's start. Jacek Koman as a character named Terokov, Vincent Regan as an arms dealer working alongside Kerrigan, and Spencer Wilding as a henchman named Granick. Crucially, the filmmakers designed the story to work as a fresh entry point rather than a direct continuation requiring prior knowledge of the first film. Although the narrative picks up roughly 8 years after the events of Ghost Rider, viewers were not expected to have seen the original. The sequel simply presumes that Johnny Blaze has spent the intervening years in hiding, now existing in what the filmmaker described as a much darker, more existential place than where the first film left him. Filming Cage confirmed publicly that filming was expected to begin in November 2010. One notable absence from the returning cast was Eva Mendes, who did not reprise her role as Roxanne, Johnny's love interest from the first film, a choice that effectively cleared the decks of that earlier romantic subplot and allowed the sequel to build an entirely new supporting cast around Blaze. Production ultimately took place across two countries, Romania and Turkey, both popular at the time with Hollywood productions looking for dramatic cost effective filming locations outside the United States. Principal photography began in Sibiu, Romania in November 2010. Sibiu, a historic Transylvanian city that had served as a European capital of culture only a few years earlier, in 2007, provided both scenic value and access to a strong pool of local crew and background talent, which the production leaned on heavily. Filming wrapped on January 24, 2011, putting the shoot at roughly 2.5 months. A notable technical decision was that the film was shot conventionally in 2D and only converted to stereoscopic 3D afterward in post production, rather than being filmed with native 3D camera rigs. This was a common approach among mid budget genre films of the era, chosen largely for cost and scheduling flexibility, even though post-conversion 3D was frequently criticized by reviewers, a criticism that would later be leveled at this film specifically. Several interior and set-based sequences were filmed on sound stages at Castelfilm, Romania, a major studio facility outside Bucharest that has hosted numerous international productions. For location work within Romania, the production made use of a range of striking real world settings. The Transfăgărășan, a famously dramatic high mountain road built through the Carpathians during the Ceausescu and later popularized internationally through television programs praising its hairpin turns and alpine scenery. The city of Targu Jiu, known in its own right for public sculptures by the modernist artist Constantin Brancusi. Hunedoara Castle, a large Gothic Renaissance castle historically associated with local legends tied to Vlad the Impaler, whose brooding architecture suited the film's horror inflected tone, and the capital, Bucharest, for additional location work. The Production then moved to Turkey for a separate leg of filming, centered on the region of Cappadocia in the country's interior. Cappadocia is known worldwide for its otherworldly landscape of wind eroded rock formations, ancient cave dwellings, and in the modern era, hot air balloon tourism, making it a visually distinctive backdrop well suited to the film's blend of the supernatural and the remote. A separate sequence set in a Greco Roman theater was filmed at Pamukkale, home to the ruins of Hierapolis, an ancient spa city built by the Seleucid Empire around the site's mineral hot springs. The surrounding wide travertine terraces at Pamukkale are themselves a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the ancient theater there provided a ready-made classical setting for the production rather than requiring an elaborate set build. For the character's signature vehicle, the filmmakers moved away from the customized chopper style motorcycle used in the first film and instead outfitted Cage's Ghost Rider with a Yamaha VMAX, a large displacement muscle cruiser known for raw power rather than classic chopper styling, a choice that gave the sequel's version of the rider a more aggressive modern silhouette on screen. Post-production post-production work centered heavily on the film's stereoscopic conversion, since the movie had been shot in standard 2D and needed to be reworked into a full 3D presentation for its theatrical release. Editor Brian Burdan, continuing his collaboration with directors Neveldine and Taylor from their Crank films, oversaw the cut of the film during this period, helping maintain the kinetic editing rhythm that had become something of a signature for the directing duo. The decision to convert to 3D after filming rather than shoot natively in the format was, as with many effects heavy genre films of the period, driven largely by cost and scheduling considerations, giving the production more flexibility during the physically demanding location shoot across Romania and Turkey before locking down the stereoscopic work in the editing and visual effects pipeline afterward. Music the film's original score was composed by David Sardi, a Brooklyn born musician who first made his name as the frontman of the rock band Bark Market before shifting his career primarily toward producing, mixing, and writing for other artists across alternative, punk, and hard rock genres. By the time he scored Spirit of Vengeance, he had built a parallel career composing music for film. The soundtrack album, credited to Sardi and released under the title Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance original motion picture score, came out on February 14, 2012, just 3 days ahead of the film's wide theatrical release through Madison Gate Records, Sony's boutique label dedicated to releasing its film and television scores. The album's track list includes cues such as Maybe You've Heard of Me, On the Road, The Order, Under Attack, Danny Escapes Car Chase, and Maro Meets Blaze, titles that trace the shape of the film's plot from its opening stretch through its major action beats. Released theatrical ahead of its wide release, Sony pursued a marketing strategy that combined targeted traditional advertising and television appearances with an aggressive social media push. As part of that campaign, Sony partnered with West Coast Marketing to run a Face of the Fan contest, inviting artists to design an alternate poster for the film. The competition was ultimately won by New York based digital media artist Justin Paul. The involvement of Neville Dean and Taylor also gave the marketing campaign a built in audience since the pair's Crank films already had a devoted following among young male moviegoers, and the studio further stoked interest with a presentation at the 2010 San Diego Comic Con. According to reporting at the time, the campaign used Cage relatively sparingly in US television commercials, even though he appeared on Saturday Night Live and did substantial promotional work throughout Europe. One industry executive observed that Cage played something of a secondary role to the film's visual effects and imagery in the marketing, remarking that the approach made the campaign feel closer to selling a video game than a star vehicle. The film had an unusual low key public debut before its actual wide release. It screened once on December 11, 2011, at the Butt Numb-a-thon Genre Film Festival in Austin, Texas, an event known for showcasing surprise and advance screenings to a dedicated audience of genre enthusiasts. The reaction from that early crowd was largely negative. Attendees who wrote about the screening described it as a step down even from the already divisive first film, with one comparing the gap between the two movies to the difference between a mediocre film and a genuinely acclaimed one. The film's actual commercial release followed just over 2 months later, opening across the United States on February 17, 2012, in both 2D and 3D formats. It opened in 3,174 theaters and debuted at number 3 at the domestic box office, earning $22, 1 million in its opening weekend. That put it behind Safe House, the Denzel Washington and Ryan Reynolds thriller, which had actually climbed to the number one spot in its second weekend of release, and also behind The Vow, a romance holdover that was still outperforming the new release despite already being several weeks into its run. The $22, 1 million opening stood in sharp contrast to the 45.4 million opening weekend of the original 2007 Ghost Rider, reflecting both the smaller marketing footprint of the sequel and its placement in the historically lower profile month of February, traditionally treated by studios as a less competitive release window than the summer or holiday corridors. By the end of its run, the film had grossed $51.8 million domestically and between roughly $80.8 million and $97.4 million internationally, for a worldwide total in the range of $132.6 million to $149.2 million, figures that vary slightly depending on the tracking source. Notably, the film's wide release also arrived just a few months before Marvel Studios' own The Avengers became a cultural and box office phenomenon in May 2012, a contrast that underscored how far outside Marvel Studios' emerging cinematic universe the Sony produced, licensed Marvel property actually sat. Home media Spirit of Vengeance arrived on home media on June 12, 2012, distributed by Sony Pictures Home Entertainment across DVD, video on demand, standard Blu-ray, and Blu-ray 3D formats. The home release included a set of special features built around the making of the film, most notably an expanded audio commentary track from directors Neveldine and Taylor, and a five-part documentary titled The Path to Vengeance, Making Ghost Rider 2, which walked through the film's pre-production, production, post-production, and release phases in turn. In the weeks around the film's release, Neville Dean and Taylor spoke publicly about the possibility of a third Ghost Rider film, floating the idea of stepping back into a producing role while handing directing duties to someone else. Neville Dean indicated that Cage remained enthusiastic about continuing in the role, suggesting the project's future would likely hinge on how well Spirit of Vengeance performed. When later asked directly about a potential third installment, Cage said it was possible but that it would not involve him, and he eventually stated more firmly that he was done with the Ghost Rider films, while adding that he would be interested in seeing a future version of the character reimagined as a woman. No third film materialized. The film rights to Ghost Rider reverted from Sony back to Marvel Studios in 2013, though there were no immediate plans at that point to develop another Ghost Rider film. It wasn't until 2016 that the character returned to screens in a different form. The Robbie Reyes incarnation of Ghost Rider, drawn from a more recent run of the comics, was introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe through the television series Agents of SHIELD, played by actor Gabriel Luna. A standalone television series built around Luna's Robbie Reyes version of the character was subsequently announced in 2019 for a planned 2020 premiere on Hulu. But that series was ultimately shelved and never moved forward into production. Reception box office commercially, Spirit of Vengeance landed in a middle ground. It was profitable relative to its reduced $57 million budget, given a worldwide total in the $132, $6 million to a $149.2 million range, but it fell well short of matching the box office performance of its predecessor, and did little to establish the kind of sustained franchise momentum the studio had clearly hoped for when development began back in 2007. The steep drop from the first film's $45.4 million opening weekend to the sequel's $22.1 million debut was particularly telling, suggesting that the smaller marketing push, the more modest release strategy, and the mixed reputation the character had already picked up from the first film all worked against the sequel's commercial ceiling. Its finish at number 3 during its opening weekend trailing both a star-driven adult thriller and a multi-week romance holdover, reinforced the sense that the film functioned more as a modestly profitable genre release than as a major theatrical event, even though it did ultimately earn roughly 2.5 times its production budget once international numbers were factored in. Critical response. Critically, the film fared even worse than its predecessor, a film that had itself received a mixed reception. On Rotten Tomatoes, Spirit of Vengeance holds an approval rating of just 18% based on 119 reviews, with an average score of 4 out of 10. The site's critical consensus describes the film as let down by a weak script and uneven CGI work, characterizing Cage's performance as so exaggeratedly over the top that it stops being enjoyable, and concluding that the film aims for so bad is good territory, but instead lands as simply bad. On Metacritic, the film carries a weighted average score of 34 out of 100 based on 22 critics, a score the site classifies as generally unfavorable. Audience reaction, as measured by CinemaScore polling, gave the film a C at grade on the service's A to F scale, a noticeably weaker result than the B grade audiences had given the first Ghost Rider film. Individual reviews varied in tone even within their shared skepticism. Scott Collera of IGN was among the more favorable critics, awarding the film 4 out of 5 stars and describing it as the kind of movie audiences would either love or hate, praising it for successfully importing the cartoonish, unhinged energy of Neveldine and Taylor's Crank films into the already outlandish concept of Ghost Rider. Andrew Barker, writing for Variety, was more measured, calling it a marginal improvement over the first film, while still describing the finished picture as far too rickety, slapdash, and dull to succeed even as a guilty pleasure. Ben Sachs of the Chicago Reader noted that this was the first time Neville Dean and Taylor had directed a script they hadn't written themselves, observing that the conventional superhero plot often seemed to constrain their usual creative instincts. Though he still felt the film retained a certain crazy charm and singled out Cage and Hinds for performances he considered entertainingly strange. Other reviews were considerably harsher. Mark Savlov of the Austin Chronicle gave the film 1.5 out of 5 stars, writing that Cage seemed to treat the role as alternately silly, genuinely fun, and simply a well paid job that didn't demand much effort, while also criticizing the film's 3D presentation as amounting to little more than occasional shots of flaming motorcycle debris flying toward the camera. Nathan Rabin of the AV Club praised Idris Elba's performance as the alcoholic priest Moreau, but felt the film squandered even more of its potential than the original, arguing that it failed to reach the kind of gleeful go for broke energy that the best so bad is good films managed to achieve. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone was among the most negative, calling the film a dreadful mess and a dishwater dull sequel to what he considered an already poor original, adding that he had never seen worse use of 3D in a theatrical release. The film's critical reputation was further cemented by recognition from the Golden Raspberry Awards, which nominated it in two categories: Worst Actor for Nicolas Cage, a nomination shared with his work that year in the unrelated film Seeking Justice, and Worst Remake, Rip-Off, or Sequel, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. There's room for successful, kitschy comic book movies, but sadly, this isn't one of them. Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance feels rushed, and not because in a year where The Avengers and The Dark Knight Rises were released, a 95-minute comic book movie feels like a short that plays before a Pixar film. No, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance feels rushed because it's the type of movie so apparently slapped together that the opening scene lists Eastern Europe as the setting. Yes, really, that infamous country of Eastern Europe. I don't ask for much out of movies like this. I'm a noted fan of Nicolas Cage, a sucker for the superhero genre, and someone who, in the right frame of mind, is willing to eagerly devour the kind of rot your teeth pixie stick of a film that Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance might have been. As it is, a mailed in bit of slapdashery that didn't embrace kitsch nearly as much as it should have. It's a stark disappointment, even taking into account my low standards going in. I mean, try just a little bit. At least give me a fake Eastern European country or something. Even Fantastic Four had the decency to do that with Doctor Doom and Latveria. Make more use of this generation's greatest B movie actor. Have a little fun. Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, in name at least, is a sequel to 2007's Ghost Rider. Nicolas Cage played Johnny Blaze in the original, and he reprises that role here. He is still dealing with the fallout of his Faustian deal with Rock, played by Ciarán Hinds this time around, but Peter Fonda in the original. But other than that, there's little in the way of continuity, which is fine, I suppose, considering the fact that Johnny Blaze is a loner to begin with and just as pertinent. There were never many concrete plans to revisit his character after the mostly mild success of the original film adaptation. Blaze, who, due to his power, has become a bit of a recluse, not unlike the Incredible Hulk, Bruce Banner, is drawn out of isolation by the mysterious Morrow, Idris Elba, who coalesces Blazes into action by promising to rid him of the Ghost Rider, the hellspawn spirit that inhabits his body and sucks the souls out of sinners, in exchange for keeping a mother and child, Nadia, Violante Placido, and Danny Fergus Riordan, from the clutches of Rourke and a gang of henchmen led by Ray Carrigan, Johnny Whitworth, who also happens to be Nadia's ex-boyfriend. So off he goes to save Nadia and Danny, only later to find out that Danny, good-natured as he is the son of Rourke himself, Aka Satan, a byproduct of another of Rourke's too good to be true deals, this one made with Nadia. Despite that unwelcome surprise, Blaze blazes on because I guess he wants to lose the Ghost Rider, and because I guess he has a connection with Danny. It was hard for me to buy either. Cage has too much fun playing a character like Ghost Rider on the one hand. On the other, he's not exactly bonding with the kid from Jerry Maguire here, and it showed in the scenes in which writers Scott M. Gimple, Seth Hoffman, and David S. Goyer tried and failed to establish simpatico between the pair. From there, the film stumbles and bumbles its way toward the obvious final showdown between Blaze and Rourke, the man who made him so powerful. Not that there aren't some fun moments to be had as it clatters to its conclusion. Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance if nothing else, looks pretty damn cool. Moro and the monks were supposed to exorcise Blaze's demons, visually at least, seem to have jumped right off the page of a Marvel comic book. Cage, if you can appreciate that the word discerning means nothing to him at this stage of his career, and that he might be a little crazy, will make you laugh, especially when he tells Danny about pissing fire. Really, Whitworth might have been most entertaining of all as Carrigan Blackout. But overall, there just wasn't enough coherent, consistent amusement to be had. Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance could have worked. At least that's what I believe. The ground in comic books is just as fertile for self aware camp as it is for the type of gritty, smart melodrama that we saw in The Dark Knight Rises. And really, all of Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. And so, in that sense, this is a film that easily could have lived up to its comic book roots, but it didn't because directors Mark Neville and Brian Taylor, who have actually done this sort of thing right in the past with the Crank movies, wasted Cage's bizarre talent for this sort of second rate project and didn't do enough with the other quality actors, Elba and Hinds particularly appearing alongside him. Discussion about this post. No posts. Ready for more Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance in 3D review. The first Ghost Rider had Nicolas Cage zooming enjoyably about the place as Johnny Blaze, a flaming demon on his mighty motorbike, collecting damned souls for Satan. His side of a bargain he once sealed with the evil one who undertook to cure his dad's cancer. Now Blaze is back for more throbbing demonic adventures in 3D. He briefly reminds us of the fact that he did all this for his ailing father, but just as before, his dad's subsequent existence is of absolutely zero interest. There's less engine power in this sequel, and the original's healthy dark humor is in short supply. Hinds plays the devilish figure of Rock, whose intense, scary face makes him look a lot like Harry Grout, the gangster inmate in TV's Porridge. The strangest part of this film is a quick montage showing the various historic and mythic incarnations of evil. There's Idi Amin in there and Stalin, but no Hitler. And the big ironic showstopper is a huge picture of Jerry Springer. Not exactly topical, not precisely hilarious, and presumably not technically libelous. Time for this rider to head off into the sunset. Science fiction and fantasy films, Nicolas Cage, action and adventure films, Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance reviews. Most viewed. Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance, video review. Related. Ghost Rider Espiritu de Venganza, trailer Castellano. Ghost Rider PS3, $200, GameStop card, Transformers Blu-ray, Arkham City shirts. Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance behind the scenes. Trailer Ilas 2, Stormforge, official gameplay trailer. Fortnite, offizieller trailer Zoo Capital 7, Saison 4, Override mit Erscheinungsdatum, Kingdom Hearts 4, offizieller Coco extended gameplay trailer D23 2026, Star Wars, Smuggler's Gambit, offizieller Ankündigungstrailer, deep dive into Kingdom Hearts, Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance. It is a source of great sorrow to me that I have yet to watch Ghost Rider I, the original fiery debut of Johnny Blaze, the soul selling, skull headed, fire peeing, bike riding ghoul from hell. Fortunately, this regret has been appeased tonight by Blaze's resurrection in the theaters. Thanks to Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance. There's no time for delaying and dallying here. Johnny Blaze has the world to save in the shape of a young boy fought over by the devil himself and some rather extreme, heavily tattooed religious mountainous zealots. If Blaze can save the child from the devil, then he might just save his own soul. Whether he really wants salvation or not is another matter. Ghost Rider oozes fire. There isn't a scrap of flesh on his bones. Instead of skin, he wears scorched leather riding gear. His grin is like the fiery jaws of hell itself. He loves what he is. And when Johnny Blaze transforms into this flaming avenger of evil, he might fight it a little, but he laughs as he changes. This all works because the man doing the transforming, the gurning, the pithy one liners, the bike riding, the fire peeing, the vengeance wreaking is none other than Nicolas Cage, here at his bonkers best. If ever there's a man that you can believe has sold his soul to the devil, it's Nick Cage, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. No one comes close. Drive Angry was one of my films of 2011. My review is here. A glorious, preposterous romp of a devil movie intensified by 3D, which also plays an unobtrusive and effective role here at its best. Drive Angry, though, had an advantage over Ghost Rider. Spirit of Vengeance, it was an 18 certificate. Every act or joke or twist of taste could be taken to its extreme, where it belonged. Ghost Rider is a disappointing 12A. It can only hint at what really goes on in the mind of Johnny Blaze. It isn't pretty. Nevertheless, there is much to enjoy here among the Turkish ruins. As well as Johnny himself, there is Ciarán Hinds as a baddie that we know could be better if it weren't for the certificate. There is also Johnny Whitworth as the rather unpleasantly moldy Carrigan and Christopher Lambert as Methodius, a kind of Paul Bettany role. To add a bit of female interest there is Violante Placido as Nadia, the mother of the potentially evil boy. One must wonder about the father. There is also a script with more than its fair share of amusing Nick Cage throwaway lines. Something about wine and a salad, for example. And then there's the pounding soundtrack. Having David S. Goyer, The Dark Knight, Batman Begins, Flash forward Blade Mission to Mars. As writer and producer doesn't hurt a bit. Ghost Rider won't challenge your brain cells, but if you love Nick Cage in bonkers mode, enjoyed Drive Angry, and wanted a bit more of that, but with bikes instead of supercars, then you will be very happy to spend some time laughing and grimacing at and with Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance. What's not to like? About movie Brit known to many as Wet, Dark and Wild Aka Kate. I have blogged about Jake Gyllenhaal and his movies for years. As a result, I've discovered I'm opinionated about other films too. MB began at the end of 2009 about Movie Brit. Contact Kate, email me. Contact Kate. My other places, Wet, Dark and Wild for Winter Nights. A bookish blog, My Other Places. Reviews and other features. See the drop-down menus in the header to find reviews and other features at MB. If you would like to write a film review or anything else movie related for the guests post section, you are more than welcome. Reviews and other features. Dusty Archives, November 2013. 1. April 2013. Tazan, February 2003, 1 October 2003, December 2023, August 2021, July 2012, 4 June 2012, 2 May 2012, 2001, February 2012, January 2012, 6 March 2012, 6 December 2011, 4 October 2011, 8 September 2011, 4 August 2010, July 2011, 6 June 2011, 9 May 2011, 9 April 2011, 4 March 2011, 9 February 2011, 5 January 2011, 10 8 December 2010, 7 November 2010, 4 January 2010, 8 August 2010, 7 July 2010, 9 June, 1 May 2010, 4 April 2010, January 2010, 6 February 2010, 9 December 2009, 2010, November 2009, Dusty Archives. November 2013, 1. April 2013, 1. February 2013, 3. December 2013, 3. November 2012, 1. October 2012, 3. September 2012, 3. August 2012, 1. 4. July 2012, 2. May 2012, 1. April 2012, 6. March 2012, 4. February 2012, 2. January 2012, 6. December 2011, 7 November 2011, 4. October 2011, 8. September 2011, 4. August 2011, 10. July 2011, 6. June 2011, 9. May 2011, 9. April 2011, 4. March 2011, 9. February 2011, 5. January 2011, 8. December 2010, 7. November 2010, 4. October 2010 9, September 2010 8, August 2010 7, July 2010 9, June 2010 1, May 2010 4, April 2010 3, March 2010 6, February 2010 8, January 2010 9, December 2009 8, November 2009 2. Places to visit: Cosmic Twins Media Hideki is where Blogomatic 3000 Clear Vision Bleeding Cool Excuses and Half Truths for Winter Tonight. A bookish blog, wet, dark, and wild. Places to visit: Cosmic Twins Media Hideki is where Blogmatic 3000 Clear Vision Bleeding Cool Excuses and Half-Truths for Winter Nights, a bookish blog, wet, dark, and wild. The latest on pause, Oblivion, Lincoln, Les Miserables, The Impossible Quartet, Life of Pi, Seven Psychopaths, Skyfall, Bond is back on form, end of watch. The latest on pause, Oblivion, Lincoln, Les Miserables, The Impossible Quartet, Life of Pi, Seven Psychopaths, Skyfall, Bond is back on form. End of watch. WDW on Twitter, tweets by Wedak and Wild. WDW on Twitter. Subscribe to MBRSS posts. Subscribe to MBRSS posts. Admin, create account, login, entries, feed, comments, feed, WordPress.com. Admin, create account, login, entries, feed, comments, feed, WordPress.com.